the issue that we always have to get across that's so important is that it's really not about us. You know, a lot of people put Israel at the center of everything and say that Israel's size is somehow or another determining or dictating the feelings and the rancor of hundreds of millions of people in the Muslim world against the West and against one another. And what we see with Iran, what we see with the so-called Arab Spring, and really what we see all over the world is that if anything, Israel and anti-Semitism is a mobilizing force politically for people to side with the jihadists and really for the West itself to ignore the threat of jihad because they want to, because they're motivated to do so by anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist rhetoric. So I think that that's a really key, important insight that Israel has been seeking to drive home for decades. And I think that as the years pass and the threat becomes more refined and clear, I think that it becomes more and more important for us to ensure that everybody's on the same page with recognizing that Israel is not a cause of anything. The war against Israel is a consequence of internal pathologies inside of the Islamic world, by and large, and also growing pathologies inside of Western civilization.
Now, when we relate to the administration in the United States, how much are we talking about a new era, a total different era when we're talking about Trump, or is it mainly declarations at this point?
You know, I think that Trump has a completely different worldview than his predecessor, than Barack Obama. But the United States is a magnificent but enormous aircraft carrier, you know, and it takes a long time and a lot of things to happen in order to change the direction of that very massive ship. And so I think, you know, one of the important things that came about with Trump's speech on Iran and the threat and the menace that Iran poses, not only through its nuclear program, but through a whole host of operations that it undertakes throughout the region and the world in support of terrorism, proliferation of weapons and whatnot, you see that he's already forcing that directional change by changing the discourse on Iran inside of the United States, forcing Congress to take up the issue again and deliberate on the threat in a serious way. Obviously, it's true that Israel has to be able, as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says all the time, to defend itself by itself whenever necessary. I think we have to make sure that our sovereignty is respected, not guaranteed, but respected by our allies, such as the United States. And I think that it's also important to recognize that, you know, Trump's speech, I mean, just to get a sense of how problematic the situation is in the United States, his speech on Friday was really the first time that you had a reality-based statement by an American president on Iran in 9 years. Or 8 years since Obama sided with the Iranian regime against the Green Revolution in 2009. So when you understand that for 9 years, almost 9 years, American policy on Iran has been entirely dictated by fantasy concept of Iran, then you also understand how perilous the situation has become and why Israel really would be irresponsible if it were simply tethering its horse to the American cart and assuming that, you know, all will be well because America's back in business. It takes a long time to repair that kind of long-term damage.